Hey guys, I'm back to do another ranking, and thank goodness it's not another Star Wars ranking. However, it is another ranking. With The Incredibles 2 coming, I think it is time we ranked all the Pixar movies. Yep, all 19 of them. Now, I'm gonna see The Incredibles 2 eventually, but since I have not seen that, that will not be included on the list. This is just gonna be my rankings on each one, and 19 films. Yeah, I'm just gonna let you know right now. I'm gonna have to split this up. So if you see a particular part that's like, wait, where's the rest? Yeah, because it's mostly because I gotta split this up because if I did it all the way through, it's gonna be like a 40-minute video or something, or not 40 minute, maybe 30 minute, 20 minute. It basically be too long. So I'm just gonna have to do a separate video for each one. So today I'm just gonna do 19 through 16, and then tomorrow it'll be kind of be the other orders, you know. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into the list. Number 19 is Cars 2. Maybe slightly overhated because, like, I don't think it's, like, the worst. Like, I think there's a few laughs, like pistachio ice cream and some of the action scenes, well, particularly in the beginning, is pretty cool. But that is still a statement when a movie is still this awful. From the story just being a complete what the hey, to Mater being in the leading role, to it was one of those things where you look at this and you say to Pixar, I don't know what the heck you were doing, but this is a car crash. I mean, I'll give it this. It's kind of interesting to watch for what a car crash it is, but yeah, it's still bad. Like in particular the animation in that one, like where all the Pixar films, the animation it seems to step up with each one. This one actually I feel like takes a step backwards. Like the backgrounds in particular don't exactly look that impressive. I don't know, like for some reason it seemed like Pixar just dropped the ball on everything. Everything. Yeah, and yeah, it was not a fun movie to watch. And yeah, I do not want to go back. It's probably the one Pixar film I don't actually. No, there's multiple Pixar films I don't want to go back and rewatch, but this is one I definitely do not want to rewatch again. Well, maybe if I want to get a laugh here and there because it is kind of funny to watch for how dumb it can be, but for goodness sake, for how bad it gets, it's pretty bad. And yeah, there's not really much else I can add. It's just not good, and it could have been better in a lot of parts. Number 18, Monsters University. Believe it or not, this was actually a tough call. I didn't want to put Cars 2 on there just because everybody else did, and but Monsters University I felt was just as bad and if not worse than Cars 2. Now I say if not worse, and that's mostly because Monsters while Cars 2 it was kind of interesting to watch for how bad it could be. This one it's not really that interesting for how bad it could be. It's just bad, and I just felt and I was just mostly bored by most of it. Like I kind of remember I rewatched it to kind of see how my opinions were, and while I was rewatching it, I was so bored by the movie that I literally just started doing other house chores while I had it on. It basically it feels like nothing more than a waste of time, and I can't really explain why because I feel like it's a better put together movie than Cars 2, but it's like it just does everything so by the books that it just doesn't feel like it's doing anything. It just feels like it's just doing nothing. And whenever I stop watching the movie, I feel like I just wasted a whole bunch of time. Like I just did a whole bunch of nothing. Like I could have been like hanging out with friends or watch another movie. And if a movie does that and it's kind of a failure as a movie if it makes me feel like that. So yeah, Monsters University. I actually think it's as bad as Cars 2, but the only reason it's above is because it's a better put together film. But that's like saying Phantom is better than Attack of the Clones. You're not really stepping up much. Okay. Yep, and that's about it. oh well, not well. Yeah, that's about it about for Monsters University. So let's just move on. Number 17 is The Good Dinosaur. Honestly, I really cannot talk about this movie much because it was one of those movies that I just thought was very forgettable. The biggest issue with the movie is that it feels like two very different cliched stories. It feels like a dinosaur who has to travel to like get home, which is basically every dinosaur movie you've ever seen, and then they try to add a different story with like the story with this little kid in there, but it feels like a boy and his dog story. They just do a role reversal, and yeah, there's really not much else to it. It's just mostly just pretty standard stuff. But the only impressive thing I can give, the only thing that I really remember about it that was impressive was the background animation. It was so good. I could not believe how good the background animation in that film was. Though it does backfire in a way because it's almost too good. It's because at some points there it also just doesn't match with the 3D character designs, and that's kind of a problem in my opinion. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Aside from that, Good Dinosaur doesn't do anything that's outright negative. It's just not interesting, and I've seen the movie pretty much a million times, but there's nothing really outright negative about it. So that's why it's above Monsters University and Cars 2. It's because while it doesn't really have much to there's also nothing really outright negative about it. But yeah, that's it. Number 16, Brave. Now basically so far I've been somewhat negative about most of them. This one is more mixed, good or bad. Yeah, it's not exactly a good film in my opinion, but I'm a little bit more split on this one than I am the previous three. So basically, what Brave is, it's like why. I guess maybe I should talk about what I like that makes me split on it, and that's actually the third act. There's something they do in the third act, like with how they resolve everything, that I actually really liked. Like that was one, and I thought, this is actually not too bad. This is actually pretty good. But the ultimate problem is that you have to get through 2/3 of mediocrity to do it. If that last third was like in the beginning, I would say just watch the beginning and then you could probably skip the rest from there. But that last part is like, ooh, it made it complicated, and it does really make it challenging to ask if it's really worth it to sit through all of it, and it really does depend because the mediocrity is really mediocre. It's basically just somebody just trying to act like a princess who doesn't want to be a princess, and the mother and they have to make some kind of change. They run away and they force their mom to turn into a bear, which is going to force them to learn a lesson. And basically it's 2/3 of mediocrity followed by a really good third act. So it's one of those movies where I kind of have to say it kind of depends. Are you willing to get through 2/3 of mediocrity for 1/3 of goodness? Because the 1/3 does actually kind of make up for it. Does kind of actually make up for it, but and if they say no, I'll be like, okay, I can't blame you. And if somebody says, yeah, all right, then you probably won't hate it. But yeah, Brave. It's one of those things where it's got some good elements and it has some good elements in the third act, but it's just you gotta get through some mediocrity to get there. But I mean, I guess not everything's mediocre. Like again, the animation's pretty good. And there's particularly good backstory that was good in concept, but again, it just feels like they kind of rushed through it. If they maybe took more time to settle in that, I think I would have liked this movie a lot more. As it stands, it's just a movie that's just okay. There's some good ideas in there, but the execution is a little iffy. But yeah, if you think you can get through those two, three mediocre parts, the third it is worth kind of checking out. So but that does not mean it deserves a Best Animated Picture award. At number 15, A Bug's Life. Now, this is a movie again that kind of like Brave has some good elements, but also has some mediocre elements. However, unlike Brave, where the good parts, like basically the ending, the good parts are actually sprinkled throughout the movie, which makes the movie a bit more, which I think makes the movie a bit more tolerable to get through. Well, not really tolerable because I actually do like this one, but it makes it easier to get through, I guess you could say. But basically the thing is with A Bug's Life is that much like Brave, and a lot of these other mediocre Pixar films, it's a story we pretty much all heard of before. We pretty much seen the lie reveal story, like Bugs trying to get something for somebody else. It's filled with a lot of stuff that you've seen before. But what pulls the film through is the comedy, particularly with the circus bugs. They are really great. Like every time that they're on screen, I just laugh and I just love every second of it. I love their comedy and how they work off each other and the way they work off the bugs in there. It's just actually really funny. The only problem is that the story, it's one of those liar reveal stories, and man, that is just one of the worst cliches to any story, and because you basically have seen it so many times, you know what's gonna happen. Like the character's gonna lie, they're gonna feel bad about it, and then they're gonna whoop and dope, and then they're gonna realize, oh hey, maybe I don't have to worry about this. I'm just gonna go back and just do it anyway, and then it's choking off like nothing's a big deal, and it's basically I've seen it so many times, and it's no longer interesting. But the circus bugs really do actually pull it through, and also I'll say the third act climax is really really good. And that's also another thing that pulls it through, is that the third act is really good. But aside from that, A Bug's Life is okay. There's nothing really groundbreaking, but there's also some good elements in it. Number 14, Finding Dory, the sequel to Finding Nemo, and which I thought was so worried about when I first heard about it. I was like, this is gonna tank hard. The last time we just went to a sequel like this was Cars 2, and we all saw how that turned out. So I was so worried about this movie, and to my surprise, I thought it was pretty good. Not great, but good. Good. The biggest praise I can give it is the message, and that's learning how to deal with disabilities. I love that message, and particularly for personal reasons, it's a message that I really like to hear, and how to kind of go on with how you could still live your life. Yeah, and for that reason, that alone makes the movie pretty good for me. But has been an interesting issue I've had with it, and while I don't think there's anything outright negative about it, it's also one of those movies that doesn't really give me the urge to rewatch the movie. Like a lot of these other Pixar films, like I get like an urge to rewatch it. With Finding Dory, not so much. Every time I kind of think about it, I'm like, I don't know if I need to rewatch it like right now. Now I'm not sure if that's a sign that it's a bad movie or not, but it is one of those interesting things that you kind of think about. But another great thing, Hank, what they do with him, and like what they did with Marlin and Nemo, how they kind of try to have their relationship kind of how they're kind of growing as father and son. Though there's one thing that I would have liked to see, like Marlin trust Nemo to do like a few more things. Like I know he's still kind of an overprotective father, but I figured since Nemo kind of has done some of the stuff, some stuff more, I kind of would have liked if Marlin was let Nemo have a little bit more freedom or responsibility. But that's just me. So overall, Finding Dory is a pretty good sequel to Finding Nemo. It's just nothing that makes me want to rewatch it like immediately. And now for number 13 and 12, we've got something a little different. we've actually got a tie for the between these two, so it's going to be number 13 and 12. Now I'm going to kind of separate each one because honestly, thinking about each one, I was kind of split which one I wanted to put higher, this one film or the other film. So if you're wondering, the two films that I'm particularly split on are WALL-E and Cars. Oh boy, yeah. Well, the second one in particular I mentioned, this is going to be interesting. I can already tell this is going to be an interesting debate in the comments section. But yeah, so basically, Cars. This was one of those. This was actually a Pixar movie that I actually grew up with. Yeah, like you're already gonna say, oh crap, you grew up with this, so you got biased. And yeah, I'm biased. That doesn't mean it's not justified. Yeah, but the reason I place it lower is that mostly because while I do think that there's a lot of really good things in it, the first half is almost a little slow. It does take a while for the film to kind of get going, and I feel like the film kind of picks up with kind of the second half, like when the scenes with Doc more scenes with Doc Hudson kind of come in. That's why I feel the film actually picks up, and I actually quite enjoy those parts. It's just that there's some stuff in the first half that are just kind of iffy, but not really anything bad. And WALL-E, let me just say this: I love the first 30 minutes. Like the first 30 minutes, I would say is one of my top 10 favorite Pixar films. And but the second half but the rest of the movie is yeah. Yeah, like some people point this out, but I don't really love like the parts when they go into space. I'm actually more just invested in the relationship like between these two robots on this one barren planet, and how they deal with it, and how it's like how these two robots can have more of a romantic chemistry than two human beings. I think is actually really impressive. So so I'm actually much more into the first 30 minutes, and I just wish that the rest of the movie was like that, but the rest of it's just meh. Yeah, it's basically it's kind of like the role reversal of Brave, where Brave had like a bunch of mediocrity and had like that last bit of really goodness. And WALL-E is like it has this one great bit of goodness in the beginning, and the rest is just kind of mediocre. So and the reason I put Cars and WALL-E together is because I think both of them are equally as good, and equally as good, because like Cars has some really good moments, but there's like nothing that really makes it like big, like really makes it stand out. Well, WALL-E has some moments that really make it stand out, but it also has a lot more mediocre parts. So I had a hard time deciding which one should be higher, which one should be lower. So I just mostly decided to just group them together. But WALL-E and Cars, they're both really good, and they both have really good moments. But they also both have some pretty low moments. But nothing outright negative, but just don't really do much for me. Number 11, Toy Story. Oh my goodness, do not kill me, do not kill me. Just because I didn't put a Toy Story movie in the top 10, please do not kill me. I might have an opinion on this movie. I actually really do like this movie, but I just don't think it's enough to be put in the top 10. But please, just don't kill me in the comment section. Please. Okay, that was overdramatic. That was really overdramatic. I really should not do that again. But yeah, I kind of already knew. I kind of wanted to embrace myself because I almost have a feeling that this is gonna be like a just what this one didn't make the top 10, but basically, and this is more personal. This is like more of a biased reason, which makes sense because this is a personal list. But the thing is with Toy Story, the reason I don't. So let me just say this. I think the writing for it is great. Like the writing is probably perfect. Like the writing for the characters, the writing for the story, the way they bring it all together. It's really is a great film. Like the comedy and the character interactions, it's really well done. The reason I don't put it in the top 10 is lower than most of the other ones is mostly due to like other Pixar films, like having that emotional kind of gut puncher. Toy Story doesn't quite have like as many emotional gut punching moments. It's or when they do, they actually have kind of they have a song playing that kind of takes you out of the emotional moment. But it's not like it's not bad or anything, but it's just like, but I kind of ranked this more like kind of for emotional impact. It does for me, and Toy Story just doesn't have as much emotional impact. It's still really good. It still has a lot of great stuff like the humor and the story and the characters, but it just doesn't have the emotional impact. And I felt some of the other ones have a little bit more of an emotional impact. And if you're saying, oh wow, it's a pretty stupid reason to be biased, well then guess what? It's my opinion, and you don't have to agree. Oh, okay. I don't want that to sound condescending, but yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just my opinion. You don't have to agree. Yeah. At number 10, it is Finding Nemo. Actually, here's a fun fact. Nemo actually means no one in Latin. So, finding no one. That is almost the beautiful irony. That's what I'd like to call it. Yeah. Get ready for somebody to make a meme out of that. Honestly, they've probably already made a meme out of that, but Finding Nemo. Now a lot of people have this movie a lot higher, and that's mostly due to their emotional moments. They think which I agree with. I think the emotional moments are great, and but they also say like the writing's perfect and the story's perfect and the animation's perfect, and what I will say is, well, I think it's really good. I don't know if I would say it's perfect. I don't know. Like there's something about the way the movie's paced for me that feels a little too slow. That's just more or less me. But there's something about the pacing that doesn't quite work for me. Like I don't think it's quite a perfect movie as everybody says it is. I just because I do have because I do think like there's some pacing issues. Like it does feel a little long, a little dragged out. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But when it has an emotional impact, it has an emotional impact. It really does stick with you, and I also really love what the development Nemo goes through, how Nemo has to like learn how to be more self-independent, and how to do that, how Marlin has to ultimately learn to it has to let Nemo go, and yeah, all that I think is really good. There's just something I just don't think is like that makes it like perfect, but that's just me. Number 9 is another Pixar classic, Monsters Inc. Now this was one. Now this was another Pixar film that my mom used to love this movie, and was always one that she would always put on, and we would always watch it, and I always did enjoy watching it, but mostly for the writing, like between Mike and Sully. Like their camaraderie is one of the best Pixar camaraderies I've ever seen. I love how they interact off one another. Their chemistry, the dynamics. It's a really well put together friendship in my opinion. And I also also the stuff with Boo and Sully. Like I know a lot of people complain about Boo, like she just giggles, but I feel like what pulls her through is her relationship with Sully. I think that relationship is really good, and that's why I think, and it does make up the emotional crux of the movie, which I think is really effective. Another great thing about it is the premise of the movie. It is basically monsters screaming to get energy to their world. I think is a very creative idea. I think that's brimming with creativity. Now but now, while I am singing its praises, there are some things that I do kind of have a problem with. Like, for example, the villains I don't really think are very necessary. The motivations, I just don't think it's necessary. I also think some bits of the story are a bit confusing. Like, not to the point where it's like gonna, just make a kid completely lost, like the Phantom Menace. But there's some specifics in the story that are kind of odd. Like uh, I can't remember. Like the corporation wants to kind of shut down. Yeah, it's one of those things where the characters more drive the story than some of the other ones. This one feels more driven by the plot and circumstances, which certainly isn't bad because it made the top 10, but it does kind of take away a few points for me. But that still doesn't change how it has a great camaraderie and a really good emotional crux and some great creativity. And number 8 is now Cars 3. Okay, I know what y'all are thinking. What? A Cars movie's in the top 10? And it's not even just the first one. It's a sequel? Really? Really? Okay, yeah. I know that's gonna take a lot of you people off, but number one, it's my opinion, and number two, I have no idea what it is about this movie. Now, because like most of you, like when I heard they're making a Cars 3, I actually thought it was a joke. I genuinely thought it was a joke. But when I heard that that it was a real movie, I was like, oh crap, Pixar's just gonna phone this one in, aren't they? And holy shoot, they actually did not. Well, the best way to put it for me is it was almost like this movie was calculated for me and only me to like. It was like Pixar said, hey, there's this guy, let's make a movie that only he likes and just and put everything that he likes. Like, he really likes NASCAR racing, so let's make it about racing. And like, hey, there's a lot of like there's a lot of people like passing like the baton on to the next generation, which I'm kind of interested like for that old generation what they do, and that's what we're going to do in this one. And we're he also appreciates the mentor character, so that's what we're going to do kind of in this one. And yeah, it was almost like this movie was calculated for me and only me to like, which is really strange actually. So I'm not sure like how personal do I be with this one, because this is my list, but it's also going to be like, well, people are going to be like, wait, why is that up there? And it's because I don't know, it's like something about this movie, like the way they did it, it was almost like there was something that was geared for me to like this, and I cannot explain what it is. It was like because I really liked a lot of what the movie was doing. I liked a lot of the mentor character, like the tribute they had to kind of the mentors like throughout our life, and how ultimately we have to like kind of pass on the generation to like the next generation and all that. I don't know what it is, but something about it just worked for me. Like, I can't really explain it. It just worked. And I thought like a lot, and I actually thought like it was the first time like they actually took advantage of like the cars like actually being cars, like because like the speed and all that, and how cars are actually ultimately getting older and they're starting to retire. I felt like it was the first time they were actually taking advantage of that. I also thought the characters were actually stronger, because McQueen you see in the first two aren't exactly. It's not very interesting. This one I actually thought he was interesting and likable, finally. And Cruz I actually thought was really good as well. Like, it was mostly their bond throughout the entire film that works. If I do have problems, it's mostly due to the villain could have been a much bigger presence in the movie, and also it does have a bit of a predictable plot to it. But what do you expect from a Cars movie? Well, I'll say this: I definitely didn't expect for it to be as good as it was. So, but I am pleased that it was as good as it was. So, yeah, Cars 3. It's definitely a movie that if you do not like, I can totally get. But for me, it just does so many things right for me that I just enjoy it anyway. At number 7, I have Toy Story 2. Yes, the sequel to the first Toy Story, and in my opinion, it's even better than the first one. Now, this is more or less for emotional. Like I said with Toy Story, while I really like it, the one thing I was kind of missing from it was an emotional punch. This one I actually gives you that emotional punch with that Jessie song. Like, that is a great song. Every time I listen to that, it automatically just I automatically just want to cry, because it is like the way they do it is so well. But it's not just that, but the writing and the comedy is like, it's really good. It's one of those movies where every time it throws a joke at you, it lands and it makes you laugh hard and not to mention, like, I think Jesse, how they introduced the new characters like Jesse, Bullseye, Stinky Pete, and even Zurg, the evil Emperor Zurg, is very well done. I really like a lot of what the movie has to offer, and I also like the conflict Woody has to go through, the inability of Andy growing up and like what's going on, and like it's all a good setup to Toy Story 3 and the payoff from that, and I think that's kind of a nice conflict that's set up. And yeah, one problem I think that maybe the only problem I have is that it's a little too similar to the first one. In some ways, like you look at it, you're like, I've seen some bits of this the first one before, but honestly, that's about it. That's about it for flaws. Other than that, it's a darn good Pixar movie. At number 6 and number 5, we have another tie, which is why this is a 10 through 5 and not a 10 through 6. So, and now the tie is between The Incredibles and Coco. Now, these two films I like for similar reasons, and I think have a lot of great things about them. So let's talk. Let's talk about it. The Incredibles is basically what I like about The Incredibles is that it feels like a straight-on superhero film. Like when you watch it, you don't think about thinking, oh, I'm watching a Pixar film. You really do feel like you're watching a straight-up superhero film, and I think that's very impressive for any animated feature to do. Like to make you realize, oh, I'm not watching an animated film. I'm watching this type of genre film. Like I'm watching a superhero film, which is very impressive because animation is often looked at, oh, it's a kids genre. No, it's a medium to tell stories, and The Incredibles is the proof of that medium. Another great thing about it is that a lot of the characters, like the powers, like they're often connected to like the struggles. Like Dash has to like learn to slow down. Violet has to learn to like stand out. So and she turns visible. The mother has to learn to be more flexible, which is why she's all stretchy. And the Bob Parr needs to have the strength to protect his family, which is why he's super strong. It's perfect writing. I think it's like a fantastic amount of writing. Honestly, I think it's great, and I really do hope they continue that in Incredibles 2. You know, with like Baby Jack. And yeah, and the villain is really good. It's really good. Yeah, my only problem is I feel like there's almost too much focus on Mr. Incredible in the first two bits. Because the movie's called The Incredibles, so I kind of would have hoped to focus on more bits of the family, and they do get that focus, but it's not until the latter parts of the movie that they get that focus. Other than that, it's mostly just focused on Bob Parr and his midlife crisis, which I don't know. I feel like you could give the family a little bit more focus, but aside from that, Incredibles, darn good. Oh yeah, and by the way, Edna is hilarious. As for Coco, now this was one I have a little bit more personal connections to because I went to see this with my mom, and she was not a fan of the Day of the Dead, and when she came out of the movie, she actually appreciated the holiday, and I think that's actually really cool. And I think think like it really is one of those films that's a heart ripper. Like it will rip your heart out in the same way that song from Toy Story 2 will rip your heart out. And I think that's a really, really great job that I give Pixar a lot of credit for. Another great thing is like all the characters, like from Miguel to Hector to to the message of how sometimes your idols may not be who you are, but also like but like also another great thing is like what's more important, like following your dreams and ultimately making your career, or family. It's very it's a very delicate balance that that has to be found, and Miguel has a hard time because he wants to be a musician, but his family's against music, and I think that's a really good conflict. And and thank goodness all the comparisons to Book of Life have gone. Like, thank goodness for that. But yeah, basically, The Incredibles and Coco, both really good films in my opinion. I couldn't really decide which one I wanted to place higher. I think The Incredibles is slightly better, but I have more personal connections with Coco when seeing with my mom. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. But that's pretty much about it for those two. Yeah, moving on. Number 4 is Up. My gosh, my heart is gonna get ripped out now. Now we're getting into the real ones I love. These are the 4 films from Pixar that I love. The ones I think are classic masterpieces. And to start things off, we have Up. Now, of course, everybody's going to say, "Oh, the first 10 minutes are perfect." Like, I love the first 10 minutes, and I love it too. In some ways, you could almost make that a short film, and everybody would probably be just as satisfied. But in my opinion, I think the movie isn't like quite as good. Like, like the first 10 minutes are a smidge better, but I feel like the rest of the movie is really really good. Like, it's more or less like it's not just like about like what about this high flying adventure like going off there. It's actually a character study on Carl and how he will not let go of the past, and how in some ways it's like dragging him. It's like holding him back, and how he's like it's ultimately good to have past memories, but ultimately you have to learn to let the past go. You have to learn that you can't hold on to the things that make you think of the past. You have to let some of that stuff go. And I think think it's honestly a great message for anybody who's going through a loss, because I feel like this came out at a time when like there were some people was having some relatives die, and I feel like this movie was a great message for that. And in some ways, it's why it got considered for an Academy Award for Best Picture. Yeah, an animated film got nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, if you get that, you're doing a lot of things right. And because I think Up is a really beautifully done film. I love a lot what a lot of it has to offer. And I also love like the Russell kid, and I'll even admit that I kind of like the dog bits. I know that's kind of silly, like, oh gee, like the dogs can talk, but you know what? I don't care. I thought it was hilarious, honestly. The only real problem I have is when Carl meets the pilot. They're kind of around the same age when the pilot was like 4 years old and he was like a kid. Shouldn't the pilot be dead by now or something? I don't know. Maybe it's like Darth Vader is like some kind of life support thing, though it wasn't evident in the movie, so I'm not really sure how he survived. But I don't know. I'm just nitpicking that now. In the end, Up is just a great Pixar film. At number 3, Ratatouille. Now this is another one of those Pixar films I actually grew up watching, and yeah, like where some of the other ones I kind of see I'm seeing more and more flaws. Ratatouille is probably the one film where it's just like every time I watch it, I love it more and more, and I think it's just it is basically Brad Bird. Like, when people talk about Brad Bird and Pixar, they always think of The Incredibles. They never think about Ratatouille. I think Ratatouille is a phenomenal film. Like, I don't know, like there's something about like the relationship between like the rat and the chef, like the way they work off each other, the way they banter, and like how they ultimately have to learn to work together. There's some kind of magic that comes with the film, and like how, again, kind of like Coco, where there's like a balance of what do you do and what does your family and or what do you follow your dreams, or do you follow your family, or is there a balance that can be found? I think that's a great moral, and it's also and a lot of the stuff it says, like at the end, particularly with the critic, it says a particular great thing, like about criticism, like not just like food criticism, but even kind of like film criticism, like how how we like to criticize people, but how there's always like how it has like its downsides, how and how like sometimes maybe we become too snobby, and how you need to kind of like think about think about more when you're writing your review, or like being a critic. And I think that's honestly a great moral, because it seems nowadays with the internet, like in the movie community, everybody loves to criticize something, and sometimes I think we take it too seriously, Star Wars, but and I think in some ways I think it's a great way to uh, realize that while we want to be critics, we want to critique, we can't also be snobs, and we can't just be like just be destroying, because at the end of the day, it's about the artist that's making it, not just the art. And I think that's really good. And also a lot of the side characters are really great, and feel like it's a very well paced movie, and I think the animation is especially beautiful, especially for the food. Like every time I watch the movie, I always get hungry. Brad Bird, yeah, this is probably one of the more underrated films, and I would definitely say it's one of Pixar's more underrated films. And with that, I think Ratatouille is a delicious delight. At number 2, I have Inside Out. Now this is one. This was not just a great film to come out at this time. It was also a great film to come out for Pixar, because this was during the time when Pixar was like really going down. Like they had Cars 2, which bombed hard. They had Brave, which was divisive, and they had Monsters University, which was really divisive. So people were starting to wonder: is Pixar starting to lose their game? Like, are they starting to go downhill? And right when you think they are, here they bring in Pete Docter, the director of Monsters Inc. and Up, to bring us this highly creative film known as Inside Out. Inside Out, in my opinion, takes everything you love about Monsters Inc. And everything you love about Up, and brings it together for one great film. And honestly, I think it's a really well done, and I think it's a really great movie. Like the way it plays with your mind, like how the emotions, like they're not quite like running you like robots, but they are. But it is almost kind of like, it's almost like a balance between like the brain and the emotions, because like in some ways we do let a lot of our emotions rule our lives, and sometimes we need to like I think the way they demonstrate that is very well done, and I love like the characters. I think joy, sadness, bing bong, anger, fear, like almost all the characters I just think are great, and it also has like a few touches that I think are really creative, like sending random memories up that'll come back. I'll tell you one thing, I have that thing all the time. I'll always think of some kind of random thing, and I'll just be like, what's this doing here? Yeah, and like the story, like how it's ultimately about like the balance of your emotions, like how much joy do you have, how much sadness do you have, how much anger, fear, disgust, like all that. I really like how it's all about balance, and I feel like the way they presented how it's like a coming of age story mixed with a colorful character adventure, I think is a very well blend. I love like a lot of the creativity that comes with the film, and I think it's honestly a film we need, because it kind of helps us to learn to keep our emotions in check, because we do often then go off our emotional response, and this film teaches us that while it's okay, while having emotions aren't bad, you need to learn to keep them in check. And I think that's a really good and I think that's a really good moral, and it's also it's just a really creative, fun movie, and I just love it. Honestly, I think it's probably the Pixar's big comeback, and it definitely deserves its spot at number 2. And now, at number 1 for my favorite Pixar movie of all time, we have Toy Story 3, the third film in the Toy Story franchise, and not just one of the best Pixar films, but probably one of my favorite animated films ever made. When I say favorite animated films, I mean above like Disney, DreamWorks, and all those animation studios. It's above like all that. Because in my opinion, Toy Story 3 takes what you love about the first two and not just perfects it. Like the writing in here is absolutely genius, but it also is the biggest tearjerker that you will ever get. And it's not just nostalgia. It's basically for anybody that's been having a hard time like growing up, and like especially like I'm kind of getting ready to move on, and this is coming out at a perfect time because like there's often like a feeling of like wanting kind of wanting the childhood back, and like how you're often like you're ultimately like moving on, but you like want to hold on in some ways, and like that's almost the conflict that the toys are going through. Like they want to stay together, like, and they want to hold on to the past, but they realize that they ultimately have to move on, but they can't always but they won't always forget like the past. Like I think a lot of what the film does, and I think pretty much the film is just really great. And on top of that, it feels like Andy was almost kind of like a plot device in kind of the first two. Here, I actually thought he was a real character. I thought he was a real three-dimensional character. And I think that's really great. And another great thing about it is that almost everybody has a character arc, where in the previous films it was more kind of like Woody or Buzz or all those characters like going through an arc. No, in this one, it feels like everybody has an arc, and each one has a moment to shine. Like Mr. Potato Head, Mrs. Potato Head, Slinky, Rex, Ham the Piggy Bank, like all them, they all feel like they have a moment to shine. Oh, and yeah, Jessie and Bullseye, they're also great as well in this film. And on top of that, as for Pixar comedy, while a lot of it is done well, it has the single funniest thing I've found in any Pixar, like not just Pixar film, but any film in general. Buzz Lightyear speaking Spanish. I don't know what it was, but every time I watch that, it brings me to tears. It's just so out there. It's just so what, and like the way they do it is just. It's just so hilarious. Like I cannot help but love it every single time I see it. Like I'm laughing at it as I think about it. Okay, I better stop thinking about it. But on a more serious note, it's also really good at pulling emotions. Like particularly the ending. It really is just. It's a tearjerker. It really is a tearjerker, and some people may not like that because like, oh, I just don't want to see this, but you know what, you kind of need it. And also the ending is like really exciting. It's like a lot like Rogue. It's a lot like there's a lot of sneaking around. There's a lot of breaking out, and it's really well done. And also the villain I think is really good. Like you understand where he's coming from. It's like, in my opinion, I could go on and on about Toy Story 3. It's just a magnificently put together film. I would even consider a masterpiece. And also it was another animated film to get nominated for Best Picture. So out of 3 animated films that got nominated, 2 of them were Pixar. You could pretty much say whatever about Disney getting the first one with Beauty and the Beast, but no one's gonna forget that Pixar did it twice with both Toy Story 3 and Up. And with that concludes my rankings on all the Pixar films. Now the question is not what my ranks are. What are your rankings? How would you rank all the Pixar films? Or if you want to, you can just leave down your favorite, or you can just rank down your top 5, top 10, whatever you want to do. Just leave your thoughts each Pixar film in the comments down below. And if you want to, you can even comment on what my list are. Do you think it's great? Do you think it's crazy? Would you agree with? Or would you disagree with? Just comment below and let me know. No, and just remember, we all have different opinions. So if you disagree with mine, if you think I'm crazy, just be civil about it. Remember, opinions aren't bad as long as we are civil about it. And this is me signing off. Good night, everybody.